historically, commercial air transportation has advanced in speed technology. And I'm convinced that the supersonic airplane is the thing that is here. It's a vehicle that's going to be used, and for Pan American and TWA and the U.S. carriers having to compete against the European and Russian competition is going to force them to buy, in my judgment, the Caravel or the Russian supersonic airplane. For us to lose the leadership in the commercial aviation field, which I'm sure we will if we don't go ahead with the supersonic program, would be a terrible loss to the U.S. and prestige and economy, in my opinion.
What do you do when you lack the education to get a good job or progress in a job that you've had for some time? Or maybe you need additional training or encounter some other problem. Well, problems such as these are being handled by a pioneer program of public service careers currently being conducted by the North Central Texas Council of Governments in Arlington. The program is funded by the Federal Water Quality Administration through the Department of Labor. The career program is divided into two components: entry for newly hired public service employees and upgrade for those who have been on the job for several years. The men you see are in the entry program, which consists of 40 hours of mental and physical exams, lectures, personal counseling, and group discussions. Now, in the groups, the counselors and the man's fellow workers listen to his problems, and then they try to come up with answers.
Each level, of course, you have different rates of pay, and you can progress from the job in that family that's at the bottom of the ladder, and you can progress. There may be 2 or 3 jobs within the same job family that would give you an opportunity to earn more pay.
Tom Reinvald, administrative assistant of the North Central Texas Council of Government staff, told me the main purpose of the program is to remove any barriers either for employment or advancement. Another session will be held in May with counselors coming from all over the state to help train, teach, and solve problems. Jerry Park, Channel 8 News on the Move, Arlington.
Six Flags Over Texas is closed for the winter. The fun rides and attractions are silenced until next April. Yet this place is literally busy as a beaver, maybe even 2 beavers or a whole colony. As a matter of fact, the beavers have been so busy, 2 30-foot willow trees and several small ones have bitten the dust. A spokesman for Six Flags Over Texas says he doesn't know where the flat-tailed animals came from, but he does say they're not supposed to be here. 3 different dams built by the busybodies have been broken in the past weeks, and the Texas Department of Parks and Wildlife has been called in to try and capture the beavers alive. If they succeed, the animals will be taken to a new home. Until they're caught, management of this tourist attraction are a little nervous about the remaining willows here. The tender bark of the trees is one of Mr. Beaver's favorite foods. The teeth marks on the willows are easily detectable, and the tracks are here also of the beavers, but the clever animals stay in hiding. Texas Park Rangers Joe Brower and Sammy Rippey hope to catch the animals alive. They have set several traps in the area. If they're not caught soon, the beaver problem could turn into a major crisis. Winter is breeding time for beavers, and they usually produce a litter of 4 and sometimes as high as 8 little ones, with teeth just as strong and anxious as their elders. Jim Green, Channel 8 News on the Move, Six Flags Over Texas.
I can still manage it quite well.
That's not
But
really
I
the question.
think this is far more sexy than complete nudity. I don't know about you men, but I think that's far more sexy.
Do you think you would do the thing, though, or not?
I would not. I think that's a very personal, beautiful thing. It should belong at home.
Will it
I don't
last?
say it can't happen in the back seat of a car or on the grass in a park, but it should be when you're alone.
Do you think this will last in the movie industry?
No, I do not. Even the young kids that I've talked to, Dr. Seymour Smith back there, president of Stevens College, where I went recently, and we had a question and answer group of girls of 600. And will you verify this? They're bloody bored. No, don't verify it unless you believe it. They're bloody bored with the sex pictures, aren't they?
They're what? Bored.
Bored. There's no place to go.
No, I don't think it will end. I think there will be a reduced emphasis on dormitories as a larger and larger fraction of the total people in the young age groups go to school because many of them cannot afford separate housing, and the higher proportion will therefore be living at home. But in many universities, the dormitory and the way housing is created is a part of the educational experience, so I don't foresee that it will end, no.
What about controversial coeducational housing? Are you foresee any more experiments in this area?
Well, it sounds like fun. I presume that the people who are in it are going to be doing some experimenting. I don't know whether the universities will want to take on the political heat of doing that sort of thing.
If they would probably would have to see the State Department of Public Welfare in that the state has a contract with the federal government to operate the food stamp programs in the state of Texas, and then the local government who wants the program petitions the State Department to move into their locality and set up a food stamp program. So it would be something between the federal government and the state of Texas.
Is there a time limit of notice required?
You know, the only time limit that I'm aware of is the contract that the State Department and the state of Texas and Tarrant County, the contract calls that if either party wants or cares to break the contract, then it requires a 60 days written notice. But I'm not aware of any plans of that happening in Tarrant County at all. We're real pleased with the program here.
Again, an uptightness, an offense. People take offense now. They think they're being picked on as a minority group. It's a supersensitiveness that is unjustified.
On the other hand, people like Flip Wilson make jokes constantly. He talks with an accentuated Negro dialogue sometimes. Do you think that this is going to help relieve tensions, that we get these things out in the air?
You see, that the most common criticism you'll get about that will be from the Negroes, say that's a stereotype. See, he's making a stereotype, and they object to that. And each group begins to object to their own ethnic humor.
Ultimately, what effect does that have?
Well, I think it would be much better, of course, from a point of view of mental hygiene, if we didn't get so disturbed about it. We could accept it and laugh about it. It's only because these people are so imbued with feelings of inferiority, that this stimulates the inferiority more, and they think it's a put down, being put down. Well, one man went to the beach in Coney Island, New York, a very big beach, and he sees a little Jewish man sitting on the beach. He says, "How's the water?" He says, "Lukewarm, lukewarm." Jumped in, he almost froze to death. He rushed back, "I thought you told me the water's lukewarm." He says, "To me, it looked warm." On the other hand, an Irish nurse on an examination was asked, "What are rabies, and what can you do about them?" She said, "Rabies, a Jewish priest, there ain't a damn thing you can do about it."
You know, for most people, Christmas means a great big tree, lots of presents, Santa's Christmas Eve visit, and family reunions. But for some, Christmas means a time of disappointment. A small tree, or maybe none at all. And a small present for each, if that's possible. A tragic situation at best. Well, two organizations set about to help solve the problem. The Salvation Army and Clyde Campbell's Men's Store. Now, here's the deal. Let's bring in a used sport coat or suit and receive a trade-in allowance on new clothing. The used clothing will then be distributed through the Salvation Army to those families where Christmas lights will not be burning as bright. The savings realized by the customer won't be that great. But remember, this is the Christmas season, a time of joy for everyone, a time to remember those who may not be as fortunate as we. And this is a real good way to say Merry Christmas. This is Jerry Park, Channel 8 News on the Move, Fort Worth.
My feeling is that I would be delighted to eliminate the War on Poverty program in Dallas County, providing an adequate effort were assured for relieving the problems that are trying to be dealt with by the War on Poverty. To simply say, let us terminate it, is not enough in my mind.
These are not Black Panthers. Matter of fact, they're just a group of teenagers who are concerned about the young people here in the West Dallas area. They come every morning at 5 o'clock, cook toast, bacon, and eggs to feed what they say are children who need their help.
One morning they had maybe 3 or 4 people and 50 or 60 kids and just wouldn't do it. So originally they really needed the help, and I heard about it from a friend, and I decided that mainly for the benefit of the kids is the reason most of the people are down here. Then also it's good. It also helps us because we learn more about the kids, learn more about the people, and it's actually pretty enjoyable, believe it or not.
Tell me this, you're not a Black Panther. What do the youngsters think about the controversy that's been going on around town about the feeding of them out here in West Dallas?
Well, it's nobody considers it a joke. We know it's a serious matter because like, for instance, the parents of the people that have been involved in it were somewhat skeptical at first because they heard that the Black Panthers were supposedly involved in it. And that made a lot of people be somewhat prejudiced about the program. But actually, when you get right down to it, nobody believes it. And like all of us are involved here, nobody has ever had any encounters with the Black Panthers at all. And nobody, I haven't heard anything about how the rumor got started or whatever. And so I believe it's actually pretty ridiculous. But then again, even if they were involved, which isn't true, then it's still a good thing. The program itself is for the welfare of the kids, and nobody can say if there's anything wrong with that.
We have no choice except to call a bond election early next year. We're desperately in need of additional space in the jail. We need to complete 3 floors at a cost of $1,300,000. It'll provide housing for 150 additional prisoners. We're desperately in need of space for our records. We need a records building. It will probably be constructed just west of the present Civil Courts building and south of the old Criminal Courts building. That will cost approximately $5 million.
What's the total you're speaking of then?
I would think that the total cost will be about $7 to $8 million if we can also include parking.
It seems that at every beauty contest, commentators always use trite phrases like, gee, every one of them's a winner, but only one can wear the crown, or things like, it must have been a tough choice. They're all so lovely and so talented. Well, the simple fact of the matter is that the 8 finalists named this morning in the Miss Teenage America contest simply outclassed the others, and we'd just like to show you what some classy girls look like. Miss Teenage Charleston, West Virginia, 17-year-old Anita Joy Katsas. Miss Teenage Jacksonville, Florida, 16-year-old Marion Anthony Gilliford. Miss Teenage Los Angeles, California, 17-year-old Miss Teenage Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota, 17-year-old Michelle Lee McCabe. Miss Teenage Omaha, Nebraska, Stephanie Lynn Cutler, also 17. Miss Teenage Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, 16-year-old Patrice Diane King. Miss Teenage Richmond, Virginia, 17-year-old Michelle Legene Faison. Miss Teenage St. Louis, Missouri, 17-year-old Terry Ellen Yavitz. That's the crop, all 8 of them. The winner will be selected Saturday night amid flowers, crowns, and tears. Jay Lewis, Channel 8 News on the Move, Fort Worth.
Before any volunteer assistance which might be offered or any participation requested by outside organizations should be permitted, and this would include any individuals while they might be applying in an individual name, if that individual was recognizable clearly as an organizational person, that these always be submitted to the director or acting director of the Community Action Committee. In this case would be Bennett Miller, for his approval or disapproval before their assistance or participation would be permitted.
I believe that Judge Sterrett and I have a different outlook toward OEO. I believe that's probably the understatement of 1970. I hope it's not dumped. Let me put it that way. I guess that's about all I should say. How's that? I hope it's not dumped in Dallas County.
If the commissioners and the council were to opt out, do you think you would look with favor on continuing the program on the regional basis?
I'd look real deeply. How's that? We sure would look very deeply. I certainly couldn't give you an answer as to what our action would be. Power programs scattered in various ways over this country and put them in one bucket.
Could you play 60 minutes of football this afternoon, would you say?
No, I can't run. I couldn't very well play.
By Saturday, how do you feel you'd be?
Well, I was talking to the doctor just a few minutes ago, and he says I'm improving real quickly. And he says there's a real good possibility that I'll be able to go full speed Saturday without any complications. So that sounds real good.
Well, I'm sure your fans would be glad to hear that. What endorsement, in case you do get injured or unable to go, do you have for the Horn fans for Steve Fleming?
Well, he's been doing a real good job. He's filling in real well. He made a few mistakes, but I did the same thing when I was a sophomore. But his mistakes are the things that I guess that you just overcome by time, I guess, and playing experience. But he's filled in real well and done a great job. Of course, we have Bobby Callison that's came back, and he's behind him, and he's doing real well too. So I'm not really worried. I just hope that we just don't have to come to that.
Being an All-American and high up in the Heisman voting, carrying the weight of the team upon your shoulders doesn't seem to bother you a great deal. Is there much tension among the team as they approach the Arkansas game, Steve?
Well, I think we don't really acknowledge it that much, but I'm sure it's there. I can feel it. It's around. I think the tension, you notice it even in the coaches. It's just something that it's naturally going to be there. There's not much you can do about it.
Let's relate this game to last year's game. Do you feel the Horns took the Hogs too lightly when they went into Fayetteville last year?
Well, I'm not so sure that we took them too lightly. I just think we might have underestimated them a bit. I think they had a much better ball club than we thought they had, but much better personnel. Bill Montgomery and still in my mind, is one of the greatest quarterbacks in the country. I'm just amazed he hasn't made any All-American teams or anything of this sort this year.
I get the feeling you're not going to take them too lightly this Saturday.
No, sir, I'm not, and I hope the rest of us don't. Or it could be a long afternoon.
Well, as you know, the budget board released some figures last week of $643.1 million increase in funding for the next biennium. Of this $643 million, there was no money for new programs. There was no money for buildings for our new created institutions, which amounts to $90 million. There was no renovation money for our state-supported colleges and universities of the state. As you know, we have a building program started with our mental health and mental retardation. There's no building money in mental health. So I think that we are going to have some building money in our new budget that'll be passed by the legislature this next.
Well, they're passing first, of course. They run a pro-type offense, and they run by the numbers like the pros do. The receivers run their cuts on a number, and the passer throws to a spot before the receiver ever cuts, and it's pretty hard to defend against.
The Miss Teenage America contestants flocked to Fort Worth. The Swallows flocked back to Capistrano, and the Nuts flocked to Cleburne. In fact, Cleburne is trying to attract all the nuts that can be attracted. Now, we're not talking about the 15,000 residents of Cleburne, Texas. We're talking about the kind of nuts that come on our friend the pecan tree, like this one located in the city park of Cleburne. Actually, it's the Johnson County Pecan Show. In case you're wondering how pecans are judged, you take 10, weigh them, and then you take the meats out of those 10 and weigh that for comparison's sake. Also, other things are taken into consideration, such as the color. As many as 200 entries are expected in this year's show, which would make it the largest ever. Entries have been invited from all counties surrounding Johnson County. Actually, the pecan is more important than just for coming to see whose pecans are the best, because there was $50,000 worth of pecans sold here in Johnson County last year. They're also good for a number of other things, such as making cherry pecan delight, making pecan desert balls, Texas pecan pralines, broiled bacon-wrapped Texas pecan halves. There are many other suggestions and material put out by the Agriculture Department that you might like to use for some of your holiday baking. Well, so much for the pecan activities here in Johnson County. I know one thing, the thing that they're best suited for is to eat. Everyone thinks that what they have is the best, whether they're talking about dogs, cats, nuts, pecans. This is Roger McDonald, Channel 8 News on the Move in Cleburne.